Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. It was back in the 1960s that Joe Freeman, a student at the University of California, Berkeley, found her calling as an activist for social change. That led to her future as a renowned feminist, scholar of political science, writer, and attorney, always committed to her beliefs in justice, action, and thoughtful analysis. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
I think that I ought to summarize your background because it's so extensive and I want to save time. But you went to Berkeley. You immediately somehow got awakened. Did you always know you were going to be a political being?
To a certain extent. My mother was active in the Democratic Party while I was growing up.
Oh.
So I actually walked precincts with her in the election of 1952. Right. I got an early start.
So you got involved in the civil rights movement in Berkeley, but also you were there at the time of the free speech movement.
Yes, that was my senior year.
Yeah.
Managed to be there at a very interesting time, as they say.
And then you worked for the civil rights movement for
Right.
quite a while, a couple of years.
The civil rights movement in the Bay Area was the precedent for the Berkeley free speech movement. It trained us in activism. And the civil rights movement in the Bay Area, I'm going to say began or re-emerged in 1963. So we had a year's worth of training before the free speech movement started in 1964. So I had those 2 years total of activism. And then when I graduated in 65, I went south with SCOPE, Southern Christian Leadership Conference's summer project for 1965.
And you stayed there for a couple of years.
And I stayed.
And then what happened?
I got run out of the state of Mississippi. That's a story.
Okay.
But I got run out of the state of Mississippi in such a way that it looked like I couldn't really work in the South any longer. So SCLC sent me to Chicago. The Chicago project was in a state of decline, shall we say. And I think SCLC just simply bit off more than it can chew, but that's another matter entirely. But I stayed in Chicago for 7 years. I started off trying to be a reporter and ran into fairly blatant sex discrimination. No one was trying to hide it in those days. They did that later, but in those days they didn't try to hide it. So I worked for a local community newspaper, but I couldn't get a job on the regular newspapers. And then I decided to go to grad school at the University of Chicago. So that's what I did for 5 of those 7 years.
And during this time, you evolved into a great interest in feminism because of all the stuff you were seeing, right?
Well,
it was also there, wasn't it, in the civil rights movement?
Yeah, it was there. I was what I will call an incipient feminist way back in Berkeley. I mean, I didn't really know what feminism was.
And you were just equal to everybody else, right?
Well, we thought we were.
You thought, yeah.
We thought we
exactly.
were, but we could see things happening, and we didn't have a theoretical framework in which to put it.
Yeah.
That was the basic problem, and I was fairly typical of that. There were lots of women around the country who were experiencing sex discrimination and observing things, but they didn't have a theoretical framework. What the civil rights movement did was give us that theoretical framework. It gave us a way of looking at discrimination and saying there's something wrong with people of a different race or a different sex being treated very differently. And the justifications that are given ain't true. Something else is going on. So, as I said, I was an incipient feminist, and a lot of what I observed working in the civil rights movement, North and South, gave me the framework, and also gave me organizing skills, which I then turned around and applied to women beginning roughly in 1967.
What did you do? You taught?
Well, I started off writing, as I said, for a community newspaper.
Right.
And I also did some freelance writing, and while I was in grad school, I did freelance writing.
And then you got your PhD.
Then I got my PhD.
And then you found that the discrimination against women extended to
political
college and university.
Yes, political science really didn't want women. I think that's the kindest way I can put it.
Yeah. So with your great academic ability, you went to law school.
No, well, not yet. I did quite a few other. Yeah. I did some other things first. Yeah. Yes, but I eventually decided that being a public interest lawyer might be a better calling.
But what I always found amazing about you is that you organized, you participated, you were an you were an activist. You went out and you did all these things that you organized for, and yet you were able to step back and analyze it and look at it and come up with the theoretical what did you call it, theoretical structure?
Theoretical framework, yeah.
That's what I never came up with.
Okay.
You're a great writer, you write a lot, you still report, and you still participate. It's amazing. So let's take all of that activity and let's look at today.
Okay.
Right? And I saw an article you wrote recently about the anti-fascists. The
Antifa.
Antifa.
Yes.
And Antifa what? They believe in a violent action.
They say they're against fascists. That's fine. I'm against fascism too. It's the way they want to confront and oppose fascism that I have a problem with. Rather than doing it through verbal confrontation, they want to do it through physical violence. They want to suppress anyone from speaking out, expressing views they disagree with. And they define fascism very broadly. Pretty much anyone they disagree with is a fascist.
And then they combine it. I mean, you take that subject and you combine it then with this, these occurrences of hate speech, of speakers going and really talking things that people don't like.
Hate speech has always been with us. I hate to say it, but that too is a matter of definition. Again, when I was working in the South, the local white population would have said that about us. As my mother would have said, it all depends on whose ox is being gored. And when I was a civil rights worker in the South, we were goring white supremacy. And we thought that was a good thing to gore, and the white supremacists didn't.
Right.
Back at Berkeley with the anti-fascists, the anti-fascists are trying to gore the ox of fascism. They're goring an awful lot of other oxes. They're not just getting that one. And needless to say, the people who are getting gored aren't too thrilled with that. So
it's nothing new.
It's nothing new. It's nothing new. And you go back in our history, you can see many earlier manifestations of it. Go back to the period before the Civil War, the abolitionists could not function in the South. They literally could not function. If an abolitionist agitator were to descend below the Mason-Dixon line and get caught speaking out, they would be tarred, feathered, and shipped out of town, assuming they were still alive. The U.S. mail actually did not distribute abolitionist flyers.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, because they were considered to be antagonistic. They would provoke hostility. So the U.S. mail, when abolitionists tried to ship flyers into the South opposing slavery, the U.S. mail held them, wouldn't distribute them. So this is nothing new, and I'm sure we can go back to earlier periods than that. People have been trying to suppress views they don't agree with since time began. And it's going on in the rest of the world. It's not just, what's bad is that it's going on here because free speech and expression is one of our primary values, but it's going on all over the world.
Why?
People don't like to hear views they disagree with. They only want to hear views that confirm what they already believe. That's basically it.
And the views haven't really become they haven't become stronger. I mean, the difference between them, they've always been there, right?
As far as I can tell.
Yeah.
I mean, some people hold stronger views than others, but as far as I can tell, they've always been there. Now, I'm happy to say white supremacy has been losing. The number of people today who are outspoken white supremacists is minuscule. 50 years ago, it wasn't minuscule. 100 years ago, it was the social consensus. Ordinary people were white supremacists. They thought it was a good thing to believe in white supremacy. That has definitely changed over time. It's now a bad thing.
So what do we do to history when we try to erase it? I mean, I just thought about the statues and the people that were always thought to be leaders.
Well, the statues thing that's a separate issue we can talk about. Well, there's an old slogan I've heard, I'm sure, when I was very, very small. It says, "Those who do not learn from history are condemned to repeat it."
And that's what's happening.
It's still true.
So we're purging history. And
we're purging history so we can repeat all of the things we shouldn't have done in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how do we account for the change in opinion? And it's also complicated, isn't it?
Some things have changed and some things haven't changed.
You've done a lot of studying about
voting.
I've
done a lot of studying about this. I've done a lot of studying about voting, and I've done a lot of studying about opinion change. I've read a lot of polls.
And written?
I don't write polls. I sometimes write about polls. I mean, you know, but I don't actually do any.
And what do you think of polling?
Oh, I think it's a tool. I think that at some point we became so enamored in it that we did not think that knowledge could be learned in any other way, and that's dumb. There are plenty of ways to learn things besides polling, but I think it's a very useful tool. We just should treat it like a tool and not the tool.
Has it affected the quality of leadership?
I don't know. I honestly couldn't tell you that one.
I mean, I sort of grew up, and I don't know where I got this idea, but of course I grew up during Roosevelt. I mean, I was born in the Roosevelt era, that people served in public service because they believed in something and wanted to further those goals.
Well, that was the Roosevelt era.
Now it's become a career ladder. You know,
it was always a career. It was always a career.
So I misunderstood.
You got an unusual. You picked an unusual era.
Do the polls help people? Do you think they compromise principle more than ever? No, it's always been that way.
Go back and look at some of our bosses that we've had in the past. And they didn't have polling back in the 19th century, but they certainly had ways of finding out what people believed, and they would try and manipulate the election to get their votes out and the other votes not out. They're doing the same thing today, just slightly different versions of it.
So why are fewer people voting?
That one I have been looking at for a long time, and I'll give you something of an answer. 50 years ago, 70 years ago, Election Day was a little like Christmas. People looked forward to it. They talked to people about it. People went and knocked on doors, rang doorbells, caught you on the street, talked about the elections. You heard about it on the radio. And when Election Day came, precinct workers came around and pulled you into the polls. And after you voted, you would either go to some public space and watch the election returns come in on a screen with a lot of other people, or you'd go to a storefront or a private party. And in pre-TV days, they had to get it by some other means. They could do it through movie screens, but it was an exciting event. Today, Election Day is more like Veterans Day. You know, it's a day off. It's a day to do nothing. And that's pretty much what people do, is nothing.
That's so interesting. So it's basically the changes with television.
Yeah.
It's brought the candidate right to the people. In the old days, when the parties were stronger, they had representatives going to the people. I used to do that.
You used to do that.
I had a district, and I knew people, and I would ring their doorbells. And the doorman, this is urban stuff, the doorman would let us in the building, and we could do anything we wanted. And then McCarthy made it a little harder because people were afraid, and then of course television came, right?
Right.
And elections were fair in a funny way because they didn't cost so much money.
Right. They were fair in a funny way and less fair in another way. They didn't cost so much money, but the parties basically hired people to do that, to do a lot of that work. They don't do that.
Right.
You know, it's there was also what I call the volunteer era. Now the volunteer era was roughly from World War II for about 30, maybe 40 years, and that's when most of the party workers were volunteers. Before that, before World War II, most of them were actually paid employees.
Oh, that's interesting.
Of the parties. Yes. What happened, part of what gave us the volunteer era was some legal changes which made it harder to have paid employees. Some of it was the fact that post-World War II era, you had a lot of women who wanted to be involved in their communities. They did not have full-time jobs, so they could afford to volunteer for the parties. And working for the parties gave them something important to do. So they did it. Then as polling took over, and as television took over, and as advertising took over, the professionals moved back in and squeezed the volunteers out. So we've returned back to the kind of professional political era that we had pre-World War II.
Right. And that was that showed the difference basically in the McCarthy campaign.
Well, the McCarthy campaign.
The kids came in and started.
Oh, you're talking about the 68, that McCarthy.
68,
I'm sorry, I got my McCarthys
68
wrong.
McCarthy campaign.
There was the 50 McCarthys and the 68 McCarthy.
Howard Dean's campaign at the beginning, and then Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. Yes.
The anti-establishment.
The anti-establishment. The anti-establishment. Yeah. Now, young people are attracted to anti-establishments, and I worked in the McCarthy campaign in '68, so I was one of those back then.
I worked in the early part of it, but then I went to Kennedy.
Then you switched parties.
I left you guys.
You left us. Ah, sigh. But you know, the Bernie Sanders people are today. They're somewhat the equivalent of that.
Yeah.
But they're anti-establishment. They want to see change. They latch onto a candidate who represents that change. And the fact that the candidate is not going to win isn't the issue.
Right.
That's just not there.
Well, now, why do you think the parties, I mean, the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, the Republican Party, they're different, right? But the Democratic Party doesn't, the establishment of the Democratic Party, I still think they don't understand about younger people who want change. I mean, they're out there saying the same things. They're acting the same way. Well, I just don't understand it.
Well, here you have to look at each state, because the state's different.
It's true.
And that we do have a state-based political system.
I don't think we have the same excitement and ability that they have in other states.
Well, New York is a one-party city. It's not a one-party state, but it's a one-party city. And that's part of the problem. The South is a one-party area. And it used to be a Democratic one party, now it's a Republican one party. When you have one-party systems, they have elements of pathology that you don't get in real two-party systems. So if you live in a place in which the primary election is in the primary, because in November, either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win 90% of the time, you miss out on a lot of the serious, healthy part of political competition.
That's exactly right.
It becomes a lot more about personalities. That was the problem in the South. And most of our populist leaders came out of the South. I don't want to say there weren't any in the North, but they were heavily in the South, because they would use personality and entertainment to get the vote out for them. They wouldn't talk about ideas. They wouldn't talk about policies. They wouldn't talk about any of that kind of stuff. Huey Long, okay, Theodore Bilbo, Tom Watson. Pick a state. I can give you a lot of them. Our current president is something of a throwback to that era. It's unusual that we have elected a New York populist as president, but it's something of a throwback to that era. I confess that when I was reading political history, I thought that populism was a consequence of imperfect organization and lower education levels. I've changed my mind.
What do you think it is?
I'm still trying to figure that one out. Our current president is a populist president. What populists do is they use emotional appeals, both to fear and hate and desire. Love and fear are what they talk about.
So it doesn't have a positive.
It couldn't be positive.
It never means reform?
Bernie Sanders is a populist. Okay, I mean, he's a populist in his own way, but he's appealing to people's desire for change as against their fear of change. Okay, populists do it both ways, and they sometimes do it both ways at the same time, but they can also emphasize one or the other. So if you look at Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are both populist. Hillary Clinton is not. She's very much an intellectual policy wonk. And we can see from the last election that the intellectual policy wonkism was not a magnet, shall we say, trying to put it discreetly. But whereas Bernie appeared to people's desire for change, Trump appealed to people's fear of change. So that was, but they were both populist. And we had a populist election, much to my surprise. Didn't think we'd do that again, but we did.
And it's strategic also.
How so?
Well, the Electoral College.
Well, the Electoral College creates some interesting
Maybe accidentally.
quirks. Yeah, it creates some interesting quirks. I don't, you know, in this case, it gave us in 2000, it gave us the presidents who had not won the popular vote. But if you're a populist, you probably don't want the Electoral College anyway, because you think you're going to win the popular vote.
Do you think eventually that will go?
Well, there's already a movement to get rid of it by the states agreeing to vote for the winner of the national popular vote rather than their state's vote. So yes, is there a movement in that direction? Yes. Will it happen? Probably not in my lifetime or your lifetime, but it might. There are lots of things that happen. Remember, the states used to elect, the state legislatures used to elect our senators.
The Republican Party now has a dispute between the populists and...
I don't know if I'd put it quite that simply. First of all, keep in mind the parties have changed radically in the last 50 years. They aren't the same party that they were. 50 years ago, the South was overwhelmingly Democratic. Now it's overwhelmingly Republican. But the attitude of the voters is not that different. The basic values underlying the vote hasn't changed that much. The parties have changed. Now, I can say that it was the civil rights movement that precipitated this change, but the parties changed. So the Republican Party in the South became the party of white supremacy because the Democratic Party got taken over by the anti-white supremacists, both blacks and whites. That's in the South. That in turn changed the composition of the National Party. So there have been some rather vast changes in the parties. California, Oregon, Washington used to be the location of progressive Republicans. Not anymore. New England used to be the location of progressive Republicans. Not anymore. They're gone. Progressive Republicanism is practically dead. So what you've seen happen in the parties over time is conservatives in both parties have migrated to the Republican Party, and progressives, liberals, whatever you want to call them, in both parties have migrated to the Democratic Party. They're not always happy there, but that's where they are. And a lot of people didn't migrate at all and are officially independent. Now you look at the last election, people are still analyzing that, so I don't want to speak too broadly. But there's some things you can see. If you take the 6 states which were swing states, which could have gone for Hillary, but in fact went for Trump. What do you see? First of all, Trump didn't win by a lot. He won by a little bit, just enough to give him the Electoral College vote, but it was only a little bit. Secondly, the turnout in those 6 states by ethnic minority voters went down. It didn't go up, it went down. It particularly went down in Wisconsin, where it actually plunged. But in all of those states, the ethnic minority vote, blacks, Hispanics, Asians, went down. Secondly, in the counties that normally vote for the Democrat, overall turnout was low. In counties that normally vote for the Republican, overall turnout was high. Now, there were switch voters. Those are harder to identify. You can identify turnout. We have statistics on that, and you can identify the demographics by an area and look at the demographics of turnout. Switch voters are really harder to understand, but there were some. We know there are some. We know there were a lot of them. I can't tell you who they all were, but I can tell you that polls ask about, are you a member of a union household? And then how did you vote?
Another thing. Yep.
Union households traditionally voted between 60 and 66% Democratic. The union household vote for the Democrat was half what it normally is.
The participation of minority groups or things low, that'll be higher after, if he ever runs again.
We hope. We don't know.
But you're going to come back, right?
Okay.
Because we haven't finished half the stuff. All right?
Okay.
I am always overwhelmed with your understanding of things and the way you present it. So I hope people look at your website, and I hope people read what you write, And I'm so glad that you have agreed. You'll come back. And thank you, Joe. We at CUNY TV always like to hear from our viewers. So if you have any subjects you'd like to explore or people you'd like to hear, please let us know. Write to us at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or go to our website, cuny.tv, and click on Contact Us. We look forward to hearing from you.